Welcome, guys. Nick Ottinger here with Team Conti Sim Performance. Excited to showcase our Week 6 adventure in Xfinity Series at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So, kind of want to dive into how fast-paced this track will be this week. Ultimately, it's going to have a avenue of cool skies, most likely. So, realistically, you're probably looking at mid 80s, potentially mid 90s, maybe, or have a one off of about 100 degrees or more on track temp, maybe throughout a Thursday or Friday during the race week. So something to keep your eye on. I think ultimately the car kind of transitions to build the same type of transition in long run longevity. So there's something to keep in your mind, you know, focus towards on how fast paced this track will be, because that's obviously going to change your variables in fuel, your lane variation, and where you're really just trying to battle to keep the tire cool, most likely. So to dive into that a little bit more, cooler track, you're going to have a lot more corner speed, center speed, corner entry speed, so you may actually induce a little bit more of a tight sensation earlier into the run. I wouldn't say it's probably going to be a heavier magnitude if it's in a hotter track state, ultimately, and keeping the right front on the car. So it's just something to kind of keep your mind, focus towards on keeping that right front and right rear as cool as you can for as long as you can. This track is really fast paced for corner entry speed and center speed, and just trying to keep the car as neutrally balanced as you can will pay off in the long run. So I'm gonna let this kind of focus on a lap here without talking, and so you guys can kind of visually see, and then we'll just dive into some methods on getting around this track efficiently. All right, I think you guys can see how much grip we really have. Ultimately, at every point on the track here in cool conditions. This is our testing weather. I'll bring it up on the screen here. You can see it's 87 track temp. If this switches to clear, you're probably not going to see but maybe a 5-degree split on hotter. So you're probably going to end up 91 to 92 on your track temp. So just keep that in mind on how that can kind of swing your balance a little bit for just some lap time really. So yeah, let's kind of talk about our entry phase. What we're really focusing on. You can see how we're getting past this D-shaped oval here at Las Vegas, and we got this small little chute that's straight with the wall. But you can really see that we're not really following that wall straight at all. So I use this marker. I'm not really one that wants to use markers a lot. It's really just feel based on when I'm trying to get to the front. The limitations of the front and the potential the front has. I'm thinking of that with mental notes by the time I already load into the bank into turn one. So you see this Las Vegas logo on the wall. And I'll slow it down a little bit. You can see I'm starting to track out from the wall at that area. So I reach that point, and I'm actually starting to use a little bit of wheel to turn away from it at that exact logo. You can tell still part throttle on a moment's notice when I get into the banking here. Yep. So this is just to make sure the car is balanced as much as I can. The car doesn't have as much grip to the front tires to stay wide open throttle here. So to really give you guys an understanding, and I'll show you case some laps to you guys on lane differences. This is going to be your optimal lane. You can run above this seam, really, and have a neutral balance, but to have the most efficient and lap time base, I think this season it's pretty much putting half the car below this middle seam. And you can see I'm part throttle for not a long duration really. It's just when I'm getting into kind of the lightest part of going into turn one. You can see how I'm lifting and I'm getting to this one, the last number one on the wall here, and I'm decelerating, but I'm not fully out of the gas at this point. I stay part throttle, ultimately to keep the balance in the car, keep the front tires and rear tires working and connected together. This is going to help the center point to really help engage the front tires to have the maximum potential, and keep the rear tires to keep that same exact really radius flow that you need at the center to maximize the drive. So definitely well on the throttle 100% on cold tires here before the second dash lines here. You can tell I'm actually bringing a little bit more than half the car lower than the seam. And then obviously you're carrying that max potential of the car. You may get a little bit offline, but it's pretty simple. You're doing your best not to scrub speed off on the exit of these corners. Turn 3 and 4, I think it's quite simple as well. You find your marker to where you're going to really want to turn in. And again, I'm putting the front end of my car, the front clip. Let's see if I can give you guys a different angle here. The second to last logo before the fence, into turn 3 and the line. So I know you guys can't see it on the screen here, but you have one more of these logos right near the gate or fence, that has the line just crossing the track. So that's a turning point, and I already got the front end just a little bit loaded to the left and shaping, my corner entry. You can tell start shaping to the left a little bit, loading for a straight entry in a 3, and just dictating where I really want to have my lift point at. I'm driving in quite aggressive, obviously on cold sticker tires, but this is probably a good rule of thumb, using these dash marks to start lifting and then shaping more wheel input at that same moment, or lifting off the throttle. You don't want to just yank the wheel to the left with, let's just say we're at 5 degrees wheel input to the left right now, right? Like, you don't want to just yank it to 25 degrees at the same moment you're just lifting off the throttle, because that's going to get you an imbalance on entry. That's going to have you chasing the rear end of the car because you got the front pointing so aggressive on sticker tires that then you're also trying to get the rear to connect and have the same exact trajectory and balance to it. So focus on that part throttle, keeping that radius like you need. Use this white line as a tool. Use it as a simple tool, just trying to wrap as long as you can in the center of 3 and 4. When you cross the seam, it's going to be more prevalent later on in the run, where you see how much counter steering I have at this moment. That's just keeping a little bit of an edge to this car and making sure I'm having the trajectory off of turn 4 low like I need and want to have. Crossing as you see, I'm crossing the seam. That's probably going to be a big indicator of where your grip you need to actually maximize keeping the stability of the car so you have a better exit off of 4. And you can still wrap this white line longer to where you have this pit exit line really kind of divulge away from the track, bend away from the track right here. If you got the car, a perfect world, we'd have a lot more grip to it. And we can wrap the white line at speed with this, but track's not cool enough. Tires just don't grip that well in this car. You don't make it that much downforce to kind of keep that trajectory down low. So later on, you're going to be using that more so as a marker to kind of help that exit straighten up and just get off the corner here. So let's go and dive into the bottom lane here. Not going to be using it this lap, but you can definitely tell I'm going to be trying to get there at a good point. You can tell I'm going to overdrive it here, get through the bumps, and I just get offline quite aggressive. So something you don't want to do. Obviously, you want to make sure you actually getting into your entry without having an imbalance and being as efficient as possible. So you don't want to just drive through the bumps. If the car is working really good, you're probably going to cross this dashed line that you barely see here with a little bit lower point of entry into one. And you're going to let the front actually work longer. You can tell I'm just too aggressive with the throttle. I get offline, and I'm back to the optimal line by the center and mid exit of 1 and 2. So let's focus up again here. Try a different approach. Now, simple thing again. I have actually a wider entry into 1, but a tire with the 2 tire what's higher here. And I'm actually off the throttle more now. So that's making sure, okay, I didn't overshoot entry, still going through the bumps, but I'm also not back to heavy throttle as early as I was last run, or last lap. So I had a lot better trajectory on exit. And really, at a track like this, these cool conditions, you're trying to figure out where you want to have your minimum speed at. So you're trying to minimize your high speed loss and your high speed momentum, everything like that. You're trying to minimize that. So you're pinpointing where you need to have that duration of lift and also keep the momentum. Can you use less throttle? Or do you need to roll off the throttle more and kind of keep that momentum loss really consistent into landing in a turn 1 and landing in the turn 3 as well? So just something to kind of think on and try to play with on that avenue for you guys that are on a comfort level. So let me get well into a run here. I'd say lap 20 was a pretty good midpoint of kind of optimizing the differences of how it progresses. Turning in at the same point, I'm actually lifting a lot more at this stage. You can tell, trying to help the front stay connected with the rear. Part throttle, a little bit more part throttle to manage that, really landing and then momentum gain after that. I'd say 20, 25. The car is pretty well balanced overall on benchmark. I think that's a really good phase of the car. As it reacts what you need to. Same thing in turn 3 and 4, just not using as much throttle. Let's see if we have a better lap kind of running the top. Let's look at lap 25. Oh, it's middle. Yep, off throttle there completely. Have a lower exit, put the right sides on the seam just to keep some balance. Do I use the top here? No. Okay. Alright, one of these laps I used the top, so we're going to find it for you. In 3 and 4. It's bottom. Pretty good angle. Pretty good angle for sure. You see I'm off the throttle the whole a lot longer in this phase to try to get to the bottom, make sure I'm not upsetting entry. It's really kind of consistent line I showcased you guys on lap 3, what I was looking for, clipping the left front on that dash, staying off throttle this time, and then back to part throttle to manage my center speed and keep an angle of the car at like I need on that white line. Alright, so we should have a lap 29 here that's showcasing pretty much the optimal line, I would say. Yep. Pretty much the optimal line still at lap 29, so something to divulge here in the turn 1 and 2 on this lap on 30 here. You may want to search for clean air and you may have a lot better avenue going to the bottom, but when you're running this middle, ultimately down here, you really limit the potential of your competitors driving in and doing a slider a lot, and having more leverage through entry and center. So top line may actually have a good avenue for you guys to work towards in 1 and 2, and the same thing in 3 and 4. You can see how much potential, let's look at it here. A lap 29, obviously you guys seen I was off throttle at this phase for a big duration. I'm staying park throttle, keeping some entry momentum into the landing zone, got the car balanced, using a little bit of track here, getting close to the wall, and turning away from it because we got a lot of grip to turn away from the center portion into the 5/8 portion of 1 and 2. So you may have a lot more luxury running the top side, but it's going to be at a risk early on in splitter contact and also just mismanaging some time loss on just having a lot longer of a lap time up there. You're having to cover a lot more distance on the top line. So when you actually get a lot of off throttle time, that's probably a better avenue in this car where you can actually make some more time to really prolong your on throttle phase. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to cover this week on potential of the car, handling traits and all that stuff. So just another factor to understand racing side by side for 1 and 2. It's really hard to clear someone on the bottom because of that momentum lane being in the middle and having more leverage to pinch your guys' center more often than not. And that's just because it's bumpier on the bottom lane and easier to kind of get off kilter on your balance and hitting your actual apex at the time you want. So patience is a virtue, obviously, but also, minimizing that high speed loss, like we mentioned, is going to be a focal point this week for you guys. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and let's kick some ass this week. We got some good weeks coming up, and a lot of I'd say a lot of differences on season 4 so far with varying track types. So this is another high speed track that we've been accustomed to running really good at, and should be another successful week. So appreciate you guys tuning in.